Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and as mentioned, I haven't really been sleeping very well, and so I was up, and it's daybreak now, and I was doing some thinking about coinage. I made a video a short while ago about 1965 and what happened to our coinage. And there's one part of our coinage that always fascinates me and makes me wonder why it exists today, because I see no reason for it, and that is the 1 cent coin, which we commonly call the penny, which is a mistake because that is a British term for their currency. But we're not getting rid of the term penny. It's going to be stuck. So it's 1 penny equals 1 cent now. And the United States started making the 1 cent coin in the 1790s. And in Philadelphia, that's where our mint was. And the interesting thing was that copper wasn't a very expensive thing, and the coins were big, quite large, to be honest. A little bit smaller than a $1/2. This is an early penny coin. I think it's from 1803, right in the earliest days. It's pretty large. If you look at the other side, you'll see 1 cent. Once again, big. A lot of people didn't have the greatest respect for our coinage. They used these large pennies, these large cents, also as tokens, and they would stamp in their information or their name. This is a penny from 1800, where they just destroyed it by putting in their information. And so these big coins were being made, and they were on a massive size. And a penny, 1 cent, was a goodly amount of money. I know it's hard to understand that today, but a penny was pretty good. Now, this leads us to another coin that came out at that time to work in hand with the 1 cent coin, and that was this one, which is the ½ cent. You see here it says ½ cent. It says 1/200th on the back here at the bottom, and that meant it was 1/200th of a dollar. Everything's well and good with our coinage. You know, they still kept making big ones. I mean, here's a rather large one. This is from the 1830s. And putting it away so you can see it kind of well. And it's big. Once again, it's that whole penny. But look at this compared to, let's say, the new coins that were going to be coming out. Look at the difference in the size. It's amazingly, this is the size of a penny today, a cent today. Look at the old ones. It's amazing in their size. Now, in the 1850s, the coin finally got smaller, and they created perhaps one of the most famous types of cents ever made. They were short-lived, but they were beautiful. They were called the Flying Eagle. And that was our 1 cent coin. And it assumed the size that would become the standard, which is what we have today. Of course, shortly after that came out, we had something called the American Civil War, which was pretty dreadful in so many different ways. But one of the things it affected was the availability of coinage. And coinage was in short supply, and there were organizations and companies that manufactured tokens that kind of represented money. Now, there was no money behind them. It's very different. You might sit there and say, like the Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin has money behind it. This didn't really have money behind it. It was a short-lived thing. But there was interesting topics available on the fronts of these tokens. This one is saying, "Our little monitor." Now, of course, the monitor is very, very important in Civil War history because that's what fought against the Confederate Virginia. And it was made in Brooklyn. And on the back, it would give you the year. I think that's somewhat viewable. 1863. Other people would be on these things too. This is kind of cool. This is Lincoln on the front of a token. And you might call it the first Lincoln penny in a sense. And of course, once the Civil War was over, we did have a 1-cent coin. It was called an Indian head. And after the Civil War, they got into great production. And this is a Indian head penny. Once again, that same size. Very important. Stayed fine until 1909, on the centenary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. They came out with, of course, the Lincoln cent. And everything was fine with that until World War II, when we were running short on copper, and they were using shell casings and all kinds of various things. But in 1943, the Lincoln cent was made out of steel. Steel and zinc. You take a magnet and hold it. It's kind of pretty amazing. But the thing is that the 1-cent coin, which started out so huge and shrunk in size as the value of copper increased, and it also made it much more manageable. And this 1-cent coin was very important because you could buy stuff that was 1 cent. I remember as a kid going to the store, there was always penny candy, you know. Now you go to a store and say, "Do you have any penny candy?" They'll look at you like you're from Mars. But they came up with other coins to work in conjunction. Sometimes you didn't need a whole cent, so you had the half cent. Sometimes you needed more. Perhaps you needed 2 cents. And so they came up with what is called the 2-cent coin. I can't tell which way that's going. There. That's a 2-cent coin. And there's an interesting thing about this 2-cent coin, that on the front of it, there's a shield. And above the shield, very hard to read, of course, is a banner. And what does it say on that banner above the shield? "In God we trust." That's the first usage of that motto on our coins. It was 1864 with the 2-cent coin. "In God we trust," that was put on by Salmon Chase, a very religious man who was inspired by another religious individual. And before long, all of our coins started having that motto. It is not part of the original inception of our coinage, just so you know that. That doesn't come out until 1864. Theodore Roosevelt tried so hard to get rid of it because he felt it offensive. But unfortunately, he couldn't get rid of it. It was so ensconced. And to this very day, we're still stuck with it. A little funny thing to mention to you. On our coinage, we had "In God We Trust," but on our money, paper money, didn't have it. Didn't have it until 1957. It's interesting. Almost 100 years later. We trusted them on coinage, but we didn't trust them on paper. So the penny, the 1-cent coin, continued to be made. And then came one of the great moments, the great change in the history of the 1-cent coin. 1982. We ceased using copper as the base material of the coin because copper was too expensive. It cost too much money to make a 1-cent coin. I think it cost something like 2 cents to make a 1-cent coin. So they used zinc and coated it with copper, very much like our silver coins that was replaced with copper as a core and coated with nickel In this case, zinc became the core, and it was coated with copper. So it wasn't worth much of anything. And that is the way the 1-cent coin has remained since that time, since 1982. Now, in this day and age, isn't it rather ridiculous to have a 1-cent coin? I think it is. If you remember going back to 2007, 2008, the federal government was spending millions and millions of dollars to redesign the back of the Lincoln penny. Originally in 1909 it had wheat ears. In 1959 it had the Lincoln Memorial. And starting in 2009, there was 4 different, I believe 4, maybe it was 3, different reverses for that coin. This is stupid. Many countries have long since gotten rid of a 1-cent coin. It certainly is time for us to do so. Doesn't serve any purpose. You just round it out. Well, we tried figuring things like that. Maybe we should bring back the 2-cent coin or the 3-cent coin, which we had. We never had a 4-cent coin. We went right to 5 cents. So the 1-cent coin, the penny, has been a part of the history of this country for many, many years, part of this republic. But I think we have reached a point in this day and age that the 1-cent coin, the penny, has become completely and totally obsolete. What's your thoughts? As I ramble at you here in the morning, after sitting up and thinking about the 1-cent coin and its history. Thank you.